Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and it's been a little while, but let's do a review real quick. So this is the new Axial Shift. If you've followed the channel for a while, I've actually reviewed previous iteration of this knife before, but they've made some really significant updates to these. They sent me this one to check out, full transparency. Axial sent me this knife. I've actually developed a pretty cool relationship with those guys. There's a couple of people on their staff that I've talked to pretty regularly. They're nice dudes, and they've asked me for feedback. They've sent me products before, and they've just been cool guys to chat with and talk. But when they were coming out with this, they asked me if I wanted to check one out, and I said absolutely, because I've long kind of held the personal belief that bang for your buck, like kind of best American-made OTF that you can buy these days for the value is the Axial OTF, the Shift, if you will. So now that they've made some updates, I think that gets even better. I'm trying to see real quick what the pricing is like on these. Let me tell you so that I know exactly. So this one's a basic iteration. It's just an aluminum body, no inlays. That said, it's much less basic than they used to be. Like, there's a lot of updates in here, but for a plain aluminum body one like this, you're looking at $219. And then for the ones that have a G10 inlay, which are sold out at the moment, but they've been restocking them. So there'll be links down below, by the way. I have an affiliate link with them. So if you shop through that, that would be awesome. But the one with G10 is only 20 bucks more. It's $239. So you can get it kind of plain like this, or with inlays. And for even the inlay, like more expensive iteration, still being sub $250 is pretty good. Especially right now, we're in August of 2024. Prices have gone up on things. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but things are getting more and more expensive. So anyway, the fact that they're coming in sub $250 with inlays on an OTF built in the US is pretty impressive to me. So let's talk about what you get on this guy. This is an aluminum body. They've updated the aluminum that they're using. It's now, let me make sure I get this right, I think it's 7000 series aluminum. Let's see. Yeah, 7000 series aluminum. So they've gone to a higher quality aluminum. There's a new internal lock mechanism they're calling the hammer lock. The trigger runs on bearing glide technology, so there's bearings underneath this keeping it smooth. This guy is in magna cut steel, let's just say that right away, and it has a milled titanium deep carry clip. So this is pretty legit. I think it's a handsome looking OTF as well. I like that everything about it is still fairly square, especially here on the back. One of my big pet peeves on OTFs is when the back is all pointy, because I like on an OTF being able to go to reverse grip, and when it's flat like this, that just gives you a great spot to put your thumb and wrap over it. That way, if you did puncture down into something, your hand isn't going to slide down the edge. This one is their clip point blade shape. They offer it in a few different blade shapes. There's like a double edge, there's a tanto, there's this bad boy. There might be a more standard drop point. I know in the past they've done warnies. I don't know if they're doing that on this body yet, but anyways, so we've got 7000 series aluminum. We've got a switch that runs on bearings. I've been through a lot of different OTFs. I've played with just about everything Microtech makes. I've owned most of the OTFs that Microtech has made. I haven't had any of their brand new generation stuff that has come out, mostly because the idea of spending what they cost on one at the moment just doesn't feel like something I want to do. But I played with quite a few at Blade Show a few months ago. So I'm real familiar with Microtech. Microtech's switches historically, in my experience, have been really hit or miss. They're either really good and like snappy and crisp and they work well, or they're so stiff that they're problematic and it's kind of a shot in the dark. Every Axial OTF that I've handled has been consistently smooth and has what I would consider to be an appropriate amount of pressure needed to engage the mechanism and then to retract the blade. So it's just really like you've got consistent push. If you're relating this to like a trigger, it would be like there is some kind of mush in there. I guess a trigger might not be the best way to describe it, because there's a heavy, consistent pressure push until you get to a wall. So if this was a trigger on a firearm, it wouldn't be a great trigger. But for an OTF, it's important, in my opinion, that you have a pretty heavy push until you get to that wall, so that if this is in your pocket or wherever you're carrying it, something sliding up against this switch is not going to accidentally get it to go off, right? You really have to press your thumb into the serrations of this button. You get to that wall, you can feel right where the wall is, it's deliberate, and then as soon as you break that wall, the wall's actually fairly light compared to the push to get there, but once you hit that wall, break it, bing, you're there. So I love the way that this action feels. Compared to their first generation, it has definitely gotten even smoother. I have no complaints about their first generation of the Shift. I really liked each of the ones that I've owned. But this, I can tell that it runs on bearings, and that these bearings are dialed really well, because it just has a smoothness, like a glassy glide. Even though you're pressing a pretty firm spring, there's no grit to it. It's pressure, but it's not gritty. Anyways, so I love the deployment on this guy. I think it works really well. And the retraction, same type of thing. You've got spring pressure, but smooth, and then you get to a wall and slurp. It just, you break that wall, it pulls right in. So great job on the switch here. I feel like compared to Microtech's, I would say I prefer this. Yeah, even if you took like the best Microtech OTF that I've had and held this switch up against it, I would say this one feels a little more dialed. And I've had some bad Microtechs, those wouldn't even be a comparison. So anyways, Microtech is a good company. I don't mean to throw shade at them. I like a lot of what they do. I own a few of their OTFs right now as we speak. So that's the way it goes. I'm just trying to be fair and comparing the two, because that's what a lot of people are going to do when they're looking at an American-made OTF. They're going to want to know how it holds up against the Microtech, which is kind of the big dog in the fight. So yeah, the action feels great. This new clip is a massive improvement over the previous generations. I liked their clips before, but this milled titanium clip that is set down flush into the body with countersunk screws so that those are flush as well. It's loop over style, goes right to the butt end. I love this. This is probably my favorite OTF clip that I've experienced yet, period. It's phenomenal. I think, yeah, if I were to pick a favorite feature about this OTF, that would probably be it. The way that this carries is better for my preferences than any other OTF I've had or currently have. I love the way that it sits deep in the pocket. It's light because it's aluminum. This clip looks handsome, in my opinion. I think it's a good looking clip. You've got a texture patch right there in the middle, so that if you're pulling this out, you've got like a textury point to pull the knife out of your pocket with. It's just really well thought out, really well built. It works great. It's reversible. You can see on the flip side of this body, if it'll focus, there we go. On the flip side of this body, you've got a space to put the clip in. When it's not installed, it has this plate that kind of fills that gap, which I like as well. So you don't just have like a hole in the knife. It's a really good clip design. I'm impressed. Like, there's a lot of ways that I'm really impressed that they're coming in at the price point that they are, built in the US, the way that materials and machine time work in 2024, especially in the US. But the fact that they pulled off this clip design and did it this well, I love it. It's really, really good. Okay, so another thing worth noting is we've got some body texture. It's going to be kind of hard to see on this because it's a black body, but there's micro milling around the edges. We're still flat on the kind of flats of the handle, but this micro milling actually makes a big difference for me in hand. I like that even the micro milling paired with the little patches of jimping that they've put. This jimping is not super aggressive, but you feel it. It's there. It does add texture. An OTF is a fairly just rectangular thing. Ergonomically, there's not a ton to hold your hand in place, but we do have a little bit of shaping. We've got, yeah, like some sculpting on the lines, right? So it's not just a total rectangle. but these added little texture points of micro milling and jimping really do a lot to give me index points and keep my hand right where I want it to be and know where it is. I like that. What else is there to say? Yeah, so it's in Magna Cut. Blade geometry on this guy, it's an OTF. It's not going to be like the sliciest beast you've ever met because you just don't have a very tall blade and you don't have a super tall grind on a blade that's already prohibitively narrow because it has to fit within this body. But that being said, the edge that came on it is fantastic. I've carried this thing a lot. I've used it for just about everything that I do in everyday stuff, which is like cutting tape on boxes, processing cardboard for the dumpster. I've cut an apple or two with it just because it's been the knife in my pocket, and that's still something I do regularly. I've cut zip ties with it, did great at that. What else? I'm sure just like random like crafty, projecty stuff around the house. I've done a lot with this knife, and I'm totally confident if this is the one knife that's on me, it's going to work really well as a cutting implement. But OTFs are not the move for an ultimate slicing beast, right? If you're just going to process tons and tons of cardboard and be cutting a material like that over an extended period of time, this is not the way to go. You want something with a blade geometry that's much thinner behind the edge, has a taller grind so there's less resistance moving up it. All that kind of stuff still applies here. But comparing against other OTFs, I would say that this holds up. I did a video way back when about comparing the cutting performance of, I think it was a Microtech Troodon with a Spyderco Para 3. And it wasn't the most scientific video ever, but geometry matters on a blade. So for slicing tasks, this is not a super slicey blade. Does it have a good edge on it? Is it thin enough to cut fairly well? Yeah, absolutely. But if you get into the minutia of like blade geometry and what different blade profiles are designed to do, this one is not designed to be a slicing powerhouse. It just isn't, and that's okay. It's still a totally serviceable tool. And for guys who are carrying OTFs, they're probably not doing miles and miles of cardboard cutting or things similar to that, or even cutting through tons of rope or cordage or whatever. It's more like, I don't know, OTFs have a different use case. I don't know how much YouTube is going to like the overt declaring this a tactical tool, but most guys considering an OTF are looking for a more tactically inspired knife. That said, OTFs, maybe this is a rant I don't need to go on, but the utility of having an OTF in your pocket, I find to be really, really nice. If I'm doing like around the house chore type of work, say I'm working in the yard, or like literally the exact example of like we let some cardboard pile up at the back door and then I take it out and I process it at the recycling bin and I shove it in. When I'm doing stuff like that, there's a lot of moments where like I'm taking the knife out, using it for a cut, and then I need both hands free to fold the cardboard or work on whatever it is in the yard I'm working on or whatever it is. So I need both hands free again, and then I need to redraw the knife and use it. And a lot of the time, I'm holding on to something while I'm drawing the knife, deploying it, making the cut, putting the knife away, and then returning my other hand, right? So the idea of having an OTF, which is inherently one of the best, like easiest platforms to use one-handed, both for getting in and out of the pocket, and then especially for deploying and retracting, it's a great tool in that respect. So if you have one hand serviceable and the other hand is busy, an OTF is phenomenal for that. That might be part of why it makes great sense as a tactical tool, but it also makes it make a lot of sense for projects where you're limited because one hand is not free, okay? So I love that about OTFs, and that makes this an easy knife to reach for, even when the blade geometry isn't a slicing beast compared to some other things that have taller, thinner grinds. It's a very good cutting tool. It works well in that arena. Anyways, sorry for rambling here quite a bit, but I like this a lot. The fact that it's in Magna Cut now, I think is great. Is Magna Cut being used a ton? Yeah, absolutely. But I like Magna Cut. I like the fact that it's just not going to rust on me. Every knife I've had in Magna Cut so far has done really well. The times I've had to resharpen Magna Cut, it's been great. The edge holds up pretty fantastic. It's a good, well-rounded steel. I like it better than some previous like well-rounded steels that were prolific in the market. I think it's an advancement. Is it the best at any one thing? Probably not. It's designed to be a bit of an all-arounder, but I think it's a big step up as all-arounders go. Sorry, that's another rant. I'm sure some people are going to disagree with me there. Metallurgists, sound off. I'm not going to read it. Anyway, that's where we're at the moment. I love this thing. I think it's great. I think if you've got a hole in your heart that can only be filled with an OTF, maybe that's kind of brutal because it could actually poke a hole in your heart. If you want an OTF in your collection, you want it to be US made, which I think it should be. The world of OTFs, there's a lot of great US made options. This, I think, is probably the best way, bang for your buck, to get a phenomenal like material and fit and finish build of an OTF that works great, carries incredibly with this clip, is fairly light. Like it makes a lot of sense. I think it wins for like bang for your buck, dollar for dollar, best you can do in the US on I wouldn't even call it budget because it's not. It's $220 for this one. But compared to a lot of the Microtechs that start at $450, I think you do better here value-wise. And I think there's ways that it's as good and in some ways where it's better than some of those knives that are twice its cost and have like a bigger name attached to them. And that's the reality. You know, it's a different business model. It's a different brand. And these guys are trying really hard and it shows. You can tell that they're doing a lot of R&D, that they're working really hard on like their machining practices, that the subtle differences between this and the early versions really add up for me too. Like if you put this side by side with the version 1 of the Shift, it's noticeable that they have been making advancements. So I love seeing that within a company too, like the fact that they're getting better and better and offering more and more, and that their prices aren't skyrocketing to do that, especially as prices in general have been going up. It's just impressive. So anyway, this is the Axial Shift version 3. And I think it's absolutely just like an incredible contender. It's one of my favorite OTFs that I currently have in my collection, and I probably have 6 or 7, something like that. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. It's a cool knife, and it makes a lot of sense for the money it costs. It also makes me not afraid to carry and use it and like beat the piss out of it for what these cost. It's easily replaceable. It's like, I like that. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.